Good evening, guys. Sorry we have started late. I was having some challenges with the platform, but I think we can carry on. For those who are still joining us, please share with them the link so that they can be able to catch up with us. Please let me know on the chat if there's any challenge, if you're not able to hear me, and then we'll be able to sort that out. Otherwise, welcome. I hope that the semester is taking you well. And yeah, let's get on to it so that we can complete advanced industrial social work today, possibly. Let's hope we can. So, for this particular time, we're going to look at employee assistance programs. We look at the content for week 12, week 13, and week 14. Because they are not that concentrated as the ones that we have had earlier. We're also running against time, and we want to be able now to move to mental health and illness. So this particular content is on employee assistance programs, which is not green to you. You have done this in your undergraduate. So we are now going to look at this in form of how you can employ this in consultancy. Like we said, and I've been emphasizing, it is my desire that you're able to use this course to enhance your skills, and particularly to be able to enhance your income base, so that this is not just a theoretical course, but in practice you're able to benefit from it and begin to apply and practice industrial social work on the ground. So we're going to be looking at it from that angle in terms of the consultancy that you can do with this content. So employee assistance programs are workplace-based intervention programs. So they're basically for the workplace, designed for the workplace, employees, employers, and organizations. And they're there to identify and help employees resolve personal problems. These are personal problems that adversely affect their performance and their well being. So, of course, personal problems exist, but to the extent that they affect their performance and well being, then the EAP gets involved because now they begin to interfere with the work output. So some of these issues may be mental health, and mental health is a real concern, a major concern in our workplaces currently. Substance health issues, family problems, which now stress, uh, actually and finance, but also management of those resources bring about various forms of stress, whether the resources are in plenty or insufficient. Legal issues, of course, where people own property and assets, legal issues may crop up, or workplace conflict or any other matters. And so the emphasis here for EAPs is that you want to have healthy employees, because healthy employees make healthy organizations, and healthy organizations make money. So let's look at some of the objectives of employee assistance programs. When you look at these objectives, you will see that they really sustainability of the organization. So, for example, the first one is to promote employee mental, emotional, and social well-being. And so, the most of the work that is done in a lot of organizations is mental, and therefore the mental health of employees really matters. Emotions, of course, the balance of emotions is also very important to have a conducive workspace. And human beings being social beings, associations among or between human beings at the workplace are important to maintain cordially. So when you move from that, we then get into the second objective, which is to enhance productivity and reduce absenteeism. Now we are getting into the economics of organizations. So just like in sustainability, where we talk about the social aspect, the environmental aspect, and the economic aspect, we now bring in productivity and reduction in absenteeism, which is the economic aspect as regards sustainability of the organization. Another objective of EAPs is that they offer early identification and intervention. Prevention is better than cure. And so, when we identify problems that might affect the organization early, problems in employees, we are able to save or cut down costs. Another objective is to provide confidential and professional support to employees. Confidentiality breeds trust. Employees will trust the EAP and they will use the EAP more and more. So it's an opportunity to get confidential support and also to give professional support to hire those who are well trained, like yourselves who are going through the training, to be able to give support to the employees. So they will employees will value that support and know that it comes from those who are responsible and well trained. Another objective is to reduce workplace accidents. Of course, accidents will then lead to loss of finance. Is to reduce conflict. Conflict, where conflict exists at a high level or at a certain level, we are less likely to produce results in terms of economics. Okay, so this again is back to the economic aspect. And then burnout, when people overwork and stretch, again, they may not be able to produce, they're not able to economically produce for the long run. There are bound to be a lot of accidents. So to reduce these accidents, conflicts, and burnout, which will eventually will lead to loss of income. And another objective is to support return to work and recovery efforts. Of course, people can't be working non-stop around the clock. People go for maternity leave, people go for sick leave, because the body sometimes needs to be able to adjust and deal with its various challenges. People go for annual leave. Some go for to rehab. Some go to other organizations and return. And so, just to help people be able to come back and gel back into the workplace so that the workplace is gelled up and people can easily work together. Teamwork is what brings out results in the end. So, to bond the persons who have left with the persons who have been there and at a continuous will like effort. Or in the WhatsApp group, if you're not comfortable with on my phone, I'll be able to see that to respond to any queries. Okay, so objectives of the EAPs, and now we just want to look at the core services that you'll be providing with these EAPs. So in this case, we're already starting to envision you owning EAP as a consultancy firm. So one major area or service area is counseling. So you can focus on counseling, where the interventions or the specific interventions you use are giving individual interventions, so that is casework, or group interventions, group therapy. And this can be used for various problems where people are stressed, the workplace can be highly stressful, like we have said in previous classes, where people are going through grief. Those are personal problems that, of course, have to, of course, affect work. And so to manage them so that people can, that has to be managed, marital issues, people, trauma, and other issues. So counseling itself is a big aspect that you can just niche on in terms of your consultation in an EAP. So it's one of the service areas. Another service area that you can strengthen on is substance abuse help. A lot of times, because of the out and the lack of job satisfaction, and we have discussed previously that employees experience at the workplace, people turn to substance use or abuse to cope. And so you can do assessments Okay, and assessment on its own is one area that you can just focus on. Like if companies suspect that employees are involved in substance abuse, for example, they can call you to just carry out assessment. You can refer, so referral to rehab, referral to a medical doctor. Perhaps there are certain organs of through the use of the substance. You can follow when they are within rehab and when they return, and you keep following up on their progress, okay, on various aspects to do with alcohol and drug misuse. And then another key area that you can focus on in your consultancy in an EAP is provision of legal and financial aid. Financial aid is very important because people come to the workspace to manage that money, regardless of whether they feel it is an amount or it is sufficient. They need assistance to be able to manage that money. So the psychological matters connected with money, psychosocial support as regards to the spending of their resources, investment matters. Then also provision of course, with the resources come adherence to the law or adherence to the policies of money, okay, like wills, civil litigations, banking, okay, so inheritance, and things like that. So when you're talking about legal and financial aid as an industrial social worker, you need to pull in that area, so you can work with a legal expert, and in finance you can work with a financial expert and be able to provide services. So you'll be dealing with the psychosocial aspects of, let's say, finance, like the psychology of money, while the financial expert will be dealing with things like budgeting. Okay. And then another core service that you can offer or you'll be offering within your EAP is workplace, the workplace from the issues that come up or creep in at the workplace. For example, management of conflict through mediation. Groups or departments or divisions deal with team dynamics, addressing issues of workplace violence and response, sorry. So in the occurrence of deaths, it does happen of disasters, accidents, layoffs, terrorist attacks, and things like that. And then we also have health and wellness, which is very key. Health is wealth. Employees are healthier, will be able to make more money, and organizations would want to really invest in health for lifestyle advice. So people who are fitter, they say there are gyms at the workplace, or there's a space to run around, or they play sports, things like that. Management of chronic illness, and the lifestyle changes or management that is incorporated within the workplace. For example, drinking water at meetings instead of sugary drinks, yeah, like soda. Okay. So, and other ways is how deep you can go into practice with health and wellness. So I want to read them so that doesn't look like we are picking on a particular. So there are three models that you can apply in EAP. We have the internal model, so whereby you are placed within the organization, you are working within the organization, and you serve members of that organization particularly. So they know that this is our industrial social worker. Sometimes you have an industrial psychologist or a staff counselor. There are so many, a staff welfare officer. There are so many titles that are given, but these personnel exist within various organizations, and they're employed particularly to assist employees with their issues. Particularly within the human resource department. So you have the internal model, Then you have the external model whereby that you're a consultant, you have your organization somewhere outside these various organizations, and they approach you or you approach them for services, and it gets to the point whereby you grow, and whenever they have issues, they call you. You can have even a call center, and they're in the best would be a 24-hour center, able to call in and share their issues, and then from the intake telephone can then expand onto other interventions. We also have the combination, particularly for bigger organizations where you must have an in-house personnel, and at the same time, the may not be able to exhaust all the problems, like we talked about referral. And so referral may be needed for particular aspects like rehab. Okay, so we have a combination of in-house and external services. So that would be the hybrid model. And so let's look at our role as social workers in this sector. And so sorry, my cat is really disturbing me. Okay, sorry about that. So our role as industrial social workers. So industrial social workers provide such key services to EAPs. It's like they're the co-facilitators of EAPs, because as social workers already, we understand the challenges that people have in general. And now we transfer this just to the workspace, okay? But we really do understand people. So we are able to provide individual services, we're able to provide group services, we're able to provide services across the organization, we're able to do advocacy and lobby and use all our methods of social work within the industry. So particularly, you'll be carrying out assessment, okay? You'll be able to understand the issue, and then you'll be able to refer that particular client to the right professional where that is necessary. So for example, in terms of assessment and referral, you'll be screening for mental health. And in cases where, for example, you need a psychiatrist has gotten to that level because of the aspect of prescription of medication, then you will refer the client to a psychiatrist. Like I already said, substance use, you may need to refer to a rehab. People may be having domestic problems. And for this, you may need some litigation matters that may be involved, okay? So depending on the matter. Another one of our roles would be therapeutic support. And when organizations really invest in this therapeutic support and counseling and psychotherapy, then it becomes very fruitful, because in terms of the mental status of employees, they're continuously offloading their stresses out. So you get a very healthy, mentally healthy set of employees. Another one of our roles is crisis intervention. People usually get confused during crisis, so we do a lot of preparation in case of the occurrence of crisis, things like accidents, suicides that may occur, or violence that may occur within the workplace. We also do a lot of training and awareness. We are aware that within the workspace, things change at such a high rate, and we're going to look at that in the next content. And so it is important for employees to keep on updating themselves on the trends, so that they can be able to beat or match the competition. So, for example, particularly for employee care, sensitizing staff on work-life balance, things like emotional intelligence, and others. Okay, we also do a lot of monitoring and evaluation so that we can understand the place at which employees are as regards their well-being. So, with the various programs that we'll be implementing, the interventions that we'll be implementing, we'll be tracking these outcomes. We'll be tracking how satisfied clients are with the interventions that we are giving, whether there's behavior change, okay, so that we can be able to justify, spending by management on these wellness programs. And then policy input. Of course, everything, like we said in earlier classes, is embedded in policy. We can't practice without a policy, which is a guide. So either the national policies or the organizational policies. And of course, the national policies will inform the organization's policies. So basically ensuring that the particular with the national policies, particularly labor laws, any legal challenges between that organization, the law. So I've given again an example there. Okay. So what are the indicators that an EAP is needed at the workspace? And these are the data that you will use to be able to convert or an existing client to invest further in EAPs. So for example, if they have increased absenteeism or lateness, and then you can collect this data for them, or this data may exist within HR, particularly if they have technology for clocking in and out. So you can use this to justify the need for an EAP, and encourage them to give it a try at first, especially if it's a new client, people who have never invested in this. If they are facing high staff turnover, for this you'll find that they might actually be the ones to reach out to you to arrest the situation. Workplace accidents or near misses, a decline in productivity, okay, interpersonal conflicts, reports of stress or burnout, substance use, okay, or such a high frequency in disciplinary cases, okay. So all of these and more you can use to be able to justify why the organization should invest in services that are included in an EAP. And this is beneficial. Let's look at the benefits of these EAPs to employees. These EAPs being run by professionals, social workers. Of course, we provide confidential services, and that builds trust from the employees. And so they'll want to access the services more and more. We give mental health support. For employees, mental health support is a big aspect because people are trying to manage, especially people who are in key positions, trying to manage their work. Again, they have responsibility at home and outside the society, outside space, like the social demands of life, like funerals and other cultural and social engagements, even within the community, like meetings within the neighborhood, security issues, and others. Again, when we have EAPs in an organization, we normally experience improved personal well-being by employees because they have the attention. It's like, exercising on a daily basis, or not exactly on a daily basis, but frequently. So the physical body is exposed to exercise and so is healthier than a neglected body. So in this case, emotionally and mentally, the employees' well-being is improved. They will also be equipped from the EAP with stronger coping skills as we take them through casework. One of the skills, of course, as you're aware, is you'll be equipping them with coping skills. We'll empower them to manage family and financial issues. So those who have EAPs or those who access EAPs are better able to manage their personal problems and their financial problems as compared to those who do not. And then to employers, healthier, they'll experience reduce absenteeism and reduce presenteeism. And of course, like you remember, presenteeism would just be people are actually physically at the workspace, but their output is low because their mind is, elsewhere. So they push themselves to physically come to work, but perhaps they are burnt out, or emotionally drained, and so they're not able to produce as well as they should. So, of course, when you reduce absenteeism and presenteeism, you increase the financial base of employers. Also improved morale and staff retention. So, of course, when employees are happier, they feel that, attention that they deserve or they require, they produce more. There's an issue with network. Is it still there? Okay, please WhatsApp if you're still experiencing challenges with network. Okay. For employers, again, we'll have a better workplace culture and reduce conflict. Well, generally, when cared for, then you will have less conflict. People will be nicer to each other. People will be more supportive of each other. Okay, so basically, it's good for making money. Where there's peace, the serenity, the organization is able to thrive more. And of course, therefore, we'll have fewer workplace accidents and fewer health claims, because, when people are feeling better, they're healthier. They get as sick as often. You notice that when there's a lot of conflict, people, even in a home space, are more likely to be sick as compared to when people are happier. Again, there'll be demonstrated corporate care. When already people are fulfilled within the organization, it is easier for the organization to even spread some of its profits or share some of its profits outside the organization, because there's a serenity, a calmness, a sense of fulfillment within the organization. Okay, I've given an example of application there. Let's look at some ethical and confidentiality considerations. Of course, in EAP, we have to be to maintain confidentiality. Um, Employees will share personal information with you, and it is expected professionally, of course, that you don't disclose that information to management. And if it needs to be disclosed, then only with written consent from the employee. That is providing before the services begin. For example, who will pay for that the organization will pay. Usually the organization will pay, but it is good to give full disclosure of the contract before proceeding. Voluntarism. The use of services must not be coerced. Employees must voluntarily come from the EAP. Non-discrimination. Um, the services must be accessible to every employee, whether they're in a low position or a high position, their gender or any other factor. And then competency, we talked about professionalism. EAPs must be trained, must be registered, must be licensed. Now that we have our Social Work Act, all of this is covered in the Act. So as you're opening your policy, also you will be ensuring that you're abiding of the Act as regards to the provision of your services. So also registration with the professional bodies. Okay, so I've given an example there. Now, of course, with everything, it's not all rosy. We'll face challenges in implementation. So part of the stigma in African society, we could generalize and say that people should not cry, things like that. And so mental health a big thing. And so it reminds me of a time way back. There's this particular car, I won't mention the brand, but it only seats 2 people, if not 2 then 1, if I remember well. But let's assume it sits 2. But there was a man, a big man, who was driving that, saying, surely such a big man fitting into this small car, which is actually was meant or was designed so that those who are not able to don't want to spend that much on fuel and want to save, because sometimes you have a car and you're using it on your own for a long time, particularly people in cities. So why have 4 spaces or 5 spaces when you can just have 2 or 1 space? Okay, I think that was the reasoning. So there's a lot of stigma sometimes in just being you, or being like other people and having problems. So within the workspace, like let's say managers may experience that kind of stigma, certain genders, okay, certain ages, okay. Limited funding for internal EAP programs, particularly if the leadership of the organization has still not understood the sense that if they invest in EAPs, it will actually make more money. A lack of awareness among staff. So, of course, to mitigate this, awareness about the services that exist. Again, a lack of awareness among supervisors about the benefits, the financial benefits, and the psychosocial benefits of having these EAPs. Cultural resistance, again, related to stigma, cultural resistance against sharing personal issues at work. Some families will feel like their information is being shared out there, and so they'd like to gag certain members of their families who are employees from seeking help. Insufficient trained personnel in the area of mental health, social workers particularly involved in mental health in the workspace. So assisting those in the workspace as address the social challenges. I've shared again best practices for effective EAP. So how do you know that your EAP is doing well? You can benchmark. So for example, if it has, one thing you must get is that the leaders, I like we said before, an industry or an organization is like a community, and when you want to penetrate the community using community development approaches, you will first seek or endorsement from the leaders of that community. By the same token, you do that within an organization. So when you have that strong support from management, then you know that your EAP is likely to be funded and supported. You will have an easier time to get your payment and access to the organization. And again, where the organization has clear policies and referral systems, it makes it easier for you. So with the policies in the work affect how employees access, may need to be addressed before you can proceed and be successful. Ongoing promotion and awareness is another best practice. So you must continue to create awareness about the EAP services, to reduce stigma and to encourage the actions. Another best practice is the confidential service delivery, private space to work from, whether it's an in-house EAP or an external EAP, protection of the data that has been shared, and the confidence. You must build confidence in the employees that the information they've shared with you will be kept safe. Another best practice is staff feedback and evaluation, that the staff will give you feedback is very, very important, because this is what will help you improve your practice. So giving out evaluation forms and being able to get responses back, especially at a high rate, is very positive. So you can use and various feedback to improve your services. Just posted a case study that we can use for discussion purposes. We have a factory worker in Kisumu. Worker at a textile factory in Kisumu began showing signs of fatigue, absenteeism, and emotional breakdown. The factory's EAP, where she disclosed domestic violence at home, assessed psychological support, legal aid, and was supported in relocating. Her performance and attendance improved dramatically. With these, you can then discuss in your sessions and use them to be able to revise. So, how did the EAP address both personal and workplace issues? What role would an industrial social worker play in this case? What challenges would arise if no EAP was in place? Okay. And then we'll just summarize and then look at the classroom activities, which are also good for practice and for revision. So, employee assistance programs are very powerful tools for promoting all-rounded being an all-rounded work or being when properly designed. Okay, so the design of your EAP has to be done very well, and when properly delivered, okay, again, the articulation, the interventions, provision of the intervention has to be done well. So when we design well and we deliver well, EAPs reduce workplace stress, they boost productivity, and then they foster a healthier, more resilient workforce. Industrial social workers are central in planning, delivering, and evaluating EAPs and ensuring workplace support systems align with professional ethics and social justice. Of course, when you practice professionally, then the public or our clients gain more confidence or gain confidence in us. Okay. So finally, with the classroom activities, we have a role play exercise here. So we'll stimulate an EAP intake session between a social worker and a distressed employee. Another assignment here, design an EAP proposal for a mid-sized company in the county, good services, budget, and ethical safeguards. You can also yourselves. Employers in Kenya should be legally mandated, so those who are for and those who are against. And then this is a field reflection task. You will interview a counselor or an HR officer about whether and how their organization supports employee well-being. All right, so that will give you some light into how that particular organization is absorbing the interventions or the use of EAPs. Okay, let's check in the chat if there are any questions or comments. I'll also just check in the WhatsApp group in case of any. All right. Okay, Chris, I've seen you said now. All right. So I think let's carry on. There are no questions, then we'll just carry on. Or if there are no comments, we'll just carry on to social work in the informal sector and emerging industries. So this is a very key aspect for this course. In the sense that we want to prepare for the future. Be ready before other professionals in similar industries get in before we do. So for this, in this case, and also to look at where there are loopholes in the current industries, areas that are neglected, and see how we can be able to capitalize on that. Okay, so again, back to the point I've been making, where you are running your consultancy on the side or full time, so that you're able to make money in the emerging sectors and also from the neglected sectors. Okay, so we have traditionally focused on formal workspaces such as banks, offices, factories, and other institutions. However, we have of late have had a heightened. So you'll find that these sectors are often unregulated, for example, and they're usually excluded from mainstream labor protections. But these areas and provide industrial social work intervention. So, informal sector referring to economic activities that are not regulated by the formal frameworks or are not protected by formal employment arrangements. For example, work, border transport. These are new sectors created by technology, social shifts. And you can see that again, the issue of sustainability is coming in when you're talking about the economic aspects is covered under that. The environmental aspects, environment is covered under that. The social shifts, the social aspects are covered under that. Okay. Industries, the systems are moving sustainably. And so we can be able to fit in and get into systems that will actually work for the long run. So these include gig work, from the word gig, or somebody's called for a gig, like a DJ. Okay, they just make money from, say, one event. Okay, for example, you have companies like Uber, Glovo, Jumia, and others. All right, we have digital platforms. There are so many that you can think of. Already, I talked of Jumia and others. We don't want to particularly refer to particular companies to purchase goods, to be able to get services. Okay, the green economy, a new niche of business, not totally new anymore, but where environmentally friends of climate change and global warming on the earth, like the floodings that have been happening of late in the e-commerce like M-Pesa, and other services, financial and technical services that are advancing so far and be able to access a product. And then artificial intelligence that is now, we're now using. In terms of social justice, we demand that no worker should be left behind. Organization or just somebody working in the streets, okay, be neglected, so that we can be able to provide assistance for those industries and ensure that we don't leave them behind. So let's look at the informal sector and its characteristics. Usually, people in the informal sector lack formal contracts or benefits. They don't have pensions. They don't have health insurance, okay, unless they make the effort to. So, already as we identify these, we are seeing the contribution that we can make, like help them join NSSF, help them register for SHA, okay, and charge a figure for that, unless we would be doing this for a non-profit organization, which is also a possibility. Um, Again, in the informal sector, they're either inconsistent or low wage about what somebody will pay for a particular um, job or wage for that time. Usually, they are vulnerable to exploitation and harassment, for example, like domestic workers. They have limited access to legal or grievance mechanisms, so usually they're not unionized. Okay, so we'll be able to assist with that. There's a high participation by minority vulnerable groups like women, youth, and persons with disabilities. And so we already have groups of products too. And then they strongly rely on community networks and self-help systems, even to be able to get customers, like the mamambogas, them and being their regular customer. Okay. So the challenges that these workers mainly face include occupational health. So working in unsafe environments, not having PPE, okay, because they're not covered. So employers, even temporary employers, get away with allowing them to work under such conditions. At other depend on seasons, like those who depend on schools. Maybe when the schools close, then that season they're out of work for that particular time. Again, another challenge, they face abuse at work. They may not have access to justice or representation, like those who are unionized in formal workplaces. Nation, for example, unequal pay for similar work or similar hours. So you'll find particularly women will get paid less, men will get paid more, but it's not always the case, or vice versa. With such a high population of unemployed youth, you have exploitation of youth involved in gig work, those who are involved in their desire and their them being tech savvy, but also being a large population, they may be taken advantage less, and also not given the right working conditions. Again, social exclusion, demonization, invisibility in public policy, because they may not be identified, okay, or recognized a registered group of persons. Okay, now let's look at our role. Now, what we can begin to do within this sector. Advocacy. Okay, we can champion for inclusion of informal workers in labor laws as signatories. For example, domestic workers are catered for. So now based on that, we can champion for policy reform within our country. We can provide psychosocial support, okay, like for long distance drivers, counseling for stress, trauma, or addiction. Giving them financial literacy training. We can carry out health promotion, reproductive health, occupational hazards, mental health, HIV and AIDS, and others. We can organize the community as regards to supporting self-help groups, circles, informal unions that can support these persons, and refer them on pro bono services. Okay, okay, let's look at some of the emerging industries that are coming up where we can provide services. Okay, for example, like I mentioned, we have platforms, various platforms, which you are aware of. There are new opportunities with the renewable power, wind power. A lot of people are doing remote digital work. We happen to be accessing some services at the same place, and we started, having a conversation with people who are there, all of us. And as she was talking, she mentioned having worked, in the kind of work that community outreach, rescue. And so I asked her, "What do you do?" And then she said, "No, what did you?" She mentioned our institution, and then I said, "Yeah, I was looking at you like you told me, but I didn't want to impose initially." So that was the first exciting point. And number two, what again excited me even more is that yeah, she's working in she's doing remote work. She works for a US company, a huge company, and she's doing for them consultancy. Basically, what we're talking about as regards to industrial social work, she's managing business clients for them. So that got me really happy. Of course, when I and all our students, and you're doing very well, I'm very happy. We are all very happy. But this particular time was very excited because it's world, you're fast moving into how fast the world is applying that. Okay, so again, the opportunities we have with these emerging industries and the gig economy are the flexible working conditions, like the challenges, no social security or pension. Of course, like for her, she has that, but now for, let's say, somebody who is doing online, get that social security or pension. Another opportunity would be the digital inclusion and to jobs, but this also comes with the challenges of lack of job security. Like during COVID, a lot of people who are doing online writing lost those opportunities. There may not be transparency in the pay. Okay, it may not also have protection for youth to be employed, because particularly youth are very tech savvy. But then the challenges also come with overwork, because just like with anybody who is wanting to make more money, um, with the circumstances, somebody may end up overworking online because there's nobody to actually stop the person. Okay, there could be exploitation from the employer because there's no particular contract, right? The algorithmic control, whereby um, AI systems or technology is able to trace logins, and how much time and money, let's say like for Uber drivers, has actually been generated, how many kilometers you've done. People may feel like they are over controlled or over supervised. Okay, I'll put some examples there. And so how do we respond to these emerging industries? um, Digital well-being, people really get affected, like for those who work at different hours with the countries where they dwell. You know how that can affect somebody. They'll end up missing social events. They'll be asleep when people are awake. Yeah, and so on and so forth. So they may need counseling. There are also those who are content moderators. They moderate content online, and for you to moderate content online, it means you have to have access to the content that you're moderating. And if it is not friendly, then of course it's going to be traumatic and affect that person. So they will need psychosocial support. Labor rights, education. We need to educate those who are in this space, who are working within these platforms, um, on how they can negotiate for digital labor rights. You see, when you're doing something online, it's actually more consuming sometimes than when you're doing something physically, because it's like you're able to do much within a less time, but use kind of more mental effort, let's say that. Okay, so the hours are not the same, really, when you do an hour online and an hour physically. The effort mentally is not the same. So helping them understand that and negotiate that when they are negotiating for pay. Providing mental health support. We need to do this for gig workers who are facing burnout or stress, because they're feeling like, I can only make money if I do the gig. Yeah, and so I need to book as many gigs as possible, but that also has to have some control to ensure that the person is not burnt out. And then social protection linkage, to put some money aside for healthcare, like medical aid, pension, for a rainy day. Okay, all right. And then let's look at the gender lens in informal and emerging sectors. So we have, like, for example, domestic workers in homes, women, and sometimes they face abuse and isolation. So that is another sector that we can invest in, particularly at policy level. We may not be able to invest in, we can invest in, let's say, pro bono, as in terms of providing therapy. But in terms of being able to actually make money from it, it will be better to focus on the policy level, okay, so that it is the sector is regulated, and then we can be able to actually approach them um, as clients who are identified by policy or by law. Then we have female traders in markets. Usually they're excluded from decision making. Again, all this comes down to policy and empowerment. And so you refer to empowerment theory. Gig workers, we have female riders or taxi drivers, sometimes report harassment or unequal rating systems. So people may want to take advantage of them, or do take advantage of them. So they need additional protection from those organizations. So that is advocating and lobbying for them through their employer, or through those whom they work for. We'll, of course, have to collaborate with various stakeholders. The Ministry of Labor will collaborate with them in terms of policy development and reforms, um, and the provision of social protection programs. When it comes to NGOs and CBOs, we'll collaborate with them when it comes to advocating for the rights of these groups of people, organizing the community. We can organize the community for them because those are skills, our skills. Trade unions, actually working with trade unions to unionize those in the informal sector. Employers or the platforms, the digital platforms that are used. So, encourage provision of fair terms, safety online, okay, and providing wellness in these platforms. Faith-based organizations, they contribute to moral advocacy and welfare support in vulnerable communities. So we can work with them, and faith-based organizations usually also have a lot of projects that they're carrying out in the community. So these are some of the additional projects that we can encourage them to take part in, okay? Because like for youth, a lot of those youth that they are also trying to draw in, to align with the faith-based organizations are involved in these sectors. Okay. Let's look at some case studies for reflection. One, informal tailors formed a cooperative with support from a local social worker. They accessed county funds and NSSF registration, improving their incomes and bargaining power. Case two, burnout in remote content moderation. Youth moderating online content for a global company began reporting trauma. A local organization set up a digital counseling line and partnered with universities for mental health support. Some questions for discussion. What social work values are reflected in these responses? Social workers balance empowerment and protection. Okay. And then to summarize, social work in the informal sector and emerging industries is essential for promoting dignity, safety, and inclusion. As labor dynamics shift, industrial social workers must innovate, advocate, and collaborate to reach and vulnerable workers. Ensuring equity in access to services and protections remains central to the social work mission. Some of the class activities that you can do for practice: workers in a particular area or border riders at a stage, identify major risks and unavailable support systems. A project, propose a social work intervention plan targeting an informal worker group, for example, welders, food vendors, or digital freelancers. Then we have a role play, simulate a consultation between a social worker and a domestic worker seeking help for workplace abuse. Then we have a debate. The informal economy is a social injustice that must be formalized. Discuss the pros and the cons. Okay. I think we are kind of, our time is running up, but I just want us to finish with these future trends and professional development in industrial social work. It is a short one, so we'll just run through this. So the nature of work, employment relations, and industrial environments is evolving rapidly, like we had already said. This demand that industrial social workers not only adapt but also continuously grow our knowledge and skills. So we want to emphasize the importance of growing our knowledge and skills to be at par with these future trends. So, in this session, we explore emerging global trends and how they affect social work practice in workplaces and strategies for professional development. So, the future of industrial social work lies at the intersection of technology, equity, and mental well being. So, we cannot be the traditional social workers that we have been because of these global trends. So, let's look at how we'll quickly um, fit in and stand out as these occurrences um, in the world today, okay, particularly in industry. So, automation and AI and implications for is bound to be job displacement. There are, with the speed of technology and with AI seems to be acquiring or has acquired, you can even find that somebody can receive counseling from AI. Okay, just as an example out of the brain. Okay, just as an example. Now, how many people will be displaced from their work? Okay, so in that case, we would need to think on our feet. The need for retraining, okay, giving people new skills, digital inclusion, like for example, now in the current world, issues of confidentiality. We're talking about modern methods of keeping information confidential, encrypting, passwords, and other advanced methods, which also exposes the information and brings in the issue of ethical concerns. Okay, so another trend again is gig and platform economy. Like we said earlier already, we have all these digital platforms through which we are using to do business or to socialize, right? And of course, I already explained on the gig economy that work, pay for work, specific work done, and moving away from just having people on permanent employment. Rather, they be on contract or for the particular gig. So there's a rise of non-traditional employment, and so there are going to be new vulnerabilities and service gaps. Okay. Then another trend is the mental health emphasis with all this digitalization, all this technology, okay, happening so fast. There's this growing recognition of workplace mental health as core to productivity and retention. Understanding these new technologies and learning newer technologies that are replacing those ones, the new ones at a much faster rate, you see. And it's the same typical brain that the human being has and has to adapt to all that. Okay. um, and still trying to beat the competition locally and internationally. Another trend is sustainable workplaces, so going green. So integration of green jobs, climate resilient workspaces, and so bringing in the issue of environmental social work. So in your practice of industrial social work, emphasis on sustainability within the organization. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is another trend. So the justice in the workplace for minorities, for women, physical and mental challenges. Okay, another trend is global migration. Organizations whereby you have people from diverse backgrounds, so increased workforce mobility. Migrant workers and diaspora professionals will have specific needs, like understanding the local language could be the new environment. Okay, so they already are faced with challenges. Digital workspaces, the rise of remote work, cybersecurity concerns, digital fatigue, which we had talked about. You're in for an hour, but it's like you've worked for 2 or 3 because of the energy required to work digitally. Decentralized work, so increased need for local support and access to services outside urban areas, like in matters devolution. Okay, investing more and more in these devolved services. So these are the trends that are emerging. So in each of these areas, there are opportunities for us to be able to um, give in interventions, as I've been mentioning. Okay. In terms of what we anticipate, we want to be able, we need to be able to take part in strengthening of labor laws, so advocacy, okay, to include informal, platform, and migrant workers. So that is a space, an opportunity for us. In terms of healthcare reforms, there are efforts to expand social protection to cover for gig workers. Okay, so that is again another opportunity for lobbying and for community organizing. Uh, in terms of growth in youth-led innovation and tech startups, they will require wellness. You have a high population of youthful people who are very innovative and very financially successful. Therefore, but there's a then also have a gap of lack of experience of those with managerial experience and skills. Okay, so giving them that workplace wellness support. Okay. Decentralized industries in the counties or in the devolved systems also need support. Over time, of course, we have been accepting that and tuning into that, but this separation from the support, especially financial support of national government, again, needs support, some, empowerment and capacity building. Increased integration of mental health into corporate HR practices. Also, so a lot of counseling, a lot of group work, psychotherapy, and things like that. So based on all these needs that are happening in the fast changing, be ready in terms of our skills. So in terms of our we need to invest, or I'm encouraging you to invest in digital literacy. So that can help you to navigate digital platforms, that can help you, for example, counseling. You no longer have to travel to Nairobi for therapy, go by road or take a flight. No, you just meet online with your client. But then you have to understand the platform that you're using to ensure confidentiality and keeping or maintaining the ethical principles as required. Again, policy and legal fluency. Of course, we operate under policies. So keeping updated on employment laws, on labor rights is will be very key. So that's another area that you'll need to upskill on. That, of course, you're always going to prove that the interventions work, that the interventions are required. So the correct tools, and there's so many in existence, even online, so that you can use to measure EAP effectiveness, mental health outcomes, to uh, um, uh, um, the effectiveness of wellness programs, okay, to be able to prove to employees, employers, and society of the importance of our interventions. That trauma-informed practice, so understanding workplace trauma, especially in high-risk sectors, and understanding the impact to the specifically to the organization in terms of mental well-being of employees and financial well-being of the organization. Okay. Mediation and conflict skills, again, we've been emphasizing this. So these are essential for managing multi-generational and multicultural teams. People are more and more becoming, diverse within various organizations. And, with diversity means that people are different, and therefore they think differently. And conflicts may occur and will need to be managed through mediation and other skills. Environmental awareness, ability to address sustainability and occupational health risks, because now companies are, more and more companies are getting greener, okay, and aligning with the sustainability tandem. Crisis interventions, lots of crisis, environmental crisis, financial crisis, and different kinds of crises that occur at the workplace. So uh, crisis intervention will help us to prepare for workplace disasters or social emergencies. I put an example there again. How will you acquire these skills? Through short courses, of course, from recognized bodies like digital ethics, mediation, occupational safety, and others. We have online certifications. Some are free, some are charged. Various you do attend, and you should attend various workshops, conferences, seminars, trainings by our associations, trainings within the university. Like with us, we have the Directorate of Short Courses. We have so many relevant courses, learning from peers, from each other, supervising each other, learning from mentors, okay, and so many other ways. There's so much support for this growth, like from the National Association. They'll give us licensing, they guide us on ethics. They provide various webinars and trainings regularly and networking opportunities. The Public Service Commission um, encourages continuous professional development. We have various universities, international bodies like the ILO, okay? And then we come to the ethical considerations within these emerging contexts that we have to bear in mind. So issues of privacy of data and confidentiality in virtual counseling, because you could assume that it is just the two of you casework, but the people who are hearing in the background. Consent in AI assisted interventions. So like now, for example, when you're giving a signature, wet ink, somebody might argue that is not a signature for consent if it is not in wet ink. There's so many arguments, like debates like that taking place. Advocacy in politically sensitive work environments, okay, like for us right now, we're going towards the electioneering period. um, Balancing corporate goals with employee welfare, but basically getting buy-in from leadership or management on wellness programs, preventing burnout in ourselves, okay? Because look at all this work and these opportunities, but you yourself or we ourselves might end up getting burnout as we're looking after people who, we thought are the ones getting burnout. So in the importance of reflective practice, to reflect on our values, activeness, and growth areas, okay, to be able to just look at where we are coming from, where we are, and where we want to go. You need to really have that roadmap for yourself in terms of your career, okay? How the world is changing and the impact you want to have, okay? So getting ready for that, with intention. Okay, so I'll give you one last exercise at the end of this that you can use to be keen on that. So an exercise here, write a one-page reflection on how your view of industrial social work has changed throughout this course. Okay, some case scenarios. Case one, workforce wellness program. A new tech company hires 100 remote workers aged 20 to 30. HR wants to promote mental well-being, is unsure how. You're hired as a social worker to design an intervention. What tools would you use? How would you engage employees online? Another case, or green jobs. A youth group running a plastic recycling plant in Bungoma faces rising stress levels due to pressure from donors and community demands. As a social worker, how do you integrate environmental and psychosocial well-being? Okay. Final thoughts. The industrial social worker of the future must be tech savvy, legally informed, trauma responsive, emotionally intelligent, social justice oriented, culturally competent, resilient, and adaptive. Wherever people labor, social work has a place. In summary, the future of industrial social work is dynamic and interdisciplinary. Social workers must proactively pursue growth, adapt to labor transformations, and uphold professional values. With strategic preparation, social work can shape future workplaces into just, safe, and empowering spaces for all. Some activities for revision. What professional competencies should any organization integrate into social work curriculum to prepare students for future workplace challenges? So, for learning organizations, you can just put your thought into um, how we can improve curricula for um, future industrial social work students. Okay, another task, design a one-day workshop for industrial social workers on future proofing your practice. Okay. Okay, this is something that if you do, you'll find that you'll be able to give this talk to social workers, just something for one, even for an hour. Okay, you can start with an hour, and it's something that you can actually sell even to the association and do a webinar on. A reflection, invite practicing social workers from public service, NGOs, and private firms to speak about their professional journeys and skills evolution. Okay. Personal action plan. This is what I meant. So you create a 6-month professional development plan on the skills that you need, the training, and the mentorship goals, so that you're able to plan with intention on where you're coming from, where you are, and where you want to go, including how that will be funded. Okay. All right. So let's see. I'm not seeing anything on the chat, but let me just check on the WhatsApp group. Okay, I'm not seeing anything on the WhatsApp group chat. So I believe you're okay. We'll still interact more in the next class, and if you have any questions, you can always reach out. So when we meet now, we'll now go to the content of mental health and illness. Okay, thank you.